到讀你聽嘅時間，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 讀到 Part 2嘅第41節，呢節嘅名叫做 On the arrival of Clavileno and the end of this protracted adventure。protracted 嘅意思即係拖長咗啊，作者自己都覺得長。咁上一回咧就提到女管家就話可以用魔法送 Don Quixote 去巨人 Malambruno 嘅跟前，只要佢騎上呢個木製馬就可以飛快咁過去噶啦，亦都邀請 Sancho 一齊過去。Don Quixote 只要擊倒呢個巨人，所有事情都會解決，包括兩位已經結成銅像嘅真人同埋呢女管家面上面嘅鬍鬚啊都會消失。咁我哋睇下呢一節挑戰巨人會唔會實行到呢？定係會有其他事發生啊？
And now night came, and with it the appointed time for the arrival of the famous horse Clavileno, the non-appearance of which was already beginning to make Don Quixote uneasy, for it struck him that, as Malambruno was so long about sending it, either he himself was not the knight for whom the adventure was reserved, or else Malambruno did not dare to meet him in single combat. But lo, suddenly there came into the garden 4 wild men, all clad in green ivy, bearing on their shoulders a great wooden horse. They placed it on its feet on the ground, and one of the wild men said, "Let the knight who has heart for it mount this machine." Here Sancho exclaimed, "I don't mount, for neither have I the heart, nor am I a knight." "And let the squire, if he has one," continued the wild man, "take his seat on the croup, and let him trust the valiant Malambruno, for by no sword save his, nor by the malice of any other, shall he be assailed. It is but to turn this peg the horse has in his neck, and he will bear them through the air to where Malambruno awaits them, but lest the vast elevation of their course should make them giddy, their eyes must be covered until the horse neighs, which will be the sign of their having completed their journey." With these words, leaving Clavileno behind them, they retired with easy dignity the way they came. As soon as the distressed one saw the horse, almost in tears she exclaimed to Don Quixote, "Valiant knight, the promise of Malambruno has proved trustworthy. The horse has come, our beards are growing, and by every hair in them all of us implore thee to shave and shear us, as it is only mounting him with thy squire and making a happy beginning with your new journey." "That I will, Signor Countess Trivaldi," said Don Quixote, "most gladly and with right goodwill, without stopping to take a cushion or put on my spurs, so as not to lose time. Such is my desire to see you and all these duennas shaved clean." "That I won't," said Sancho, "with good will or bad will, or any way at all. And if this shaving can't be done without my mounting on the croup, my master had better look out for another squire to go with him, and these ladies for some other way of making their faces smooth. I am no witch to have a taste for travelling through the air. What would my islanders say when they heard their governor was going, strolling about on the winds? And another thing, as it is 3,000 and odd leagues from this to Kandy, if the horse tires, or the giant takes huff, we'll be half a dozen years getting back, and there won't be isle or island in the world that will know me. And so, as it is a common saying, in delay there's danger, and when they offer thee a heifer run with a halter, these ladies' beards must excuse me. St. Peter is very well in Rome. I mean, I'm very well in this house, where so much is made of me, and I hope for such a good thing from the master as to see myself a governor." "Friend Sancho," said the Duke at this, "the island that I have promised you is not a moving one, or one that will run away. It has roots so deeply buried in the bowels of the earth that it will be no easy matter to pluck it up or shift it from where it is. You know as well as I do that there is no sort of office of any importance that is not obtained by a bribe of some kind, great or small. Well then, that which I look to receive for this government is that you go with your master Don Quixote and bring this memorable adventure to a conclusion, and whether you return on Clavileno as quickly as his speed seems to promise, or adverse fortune brings you back on foot travelling as a pilgrim from hostel to hostel and from inn to inn, you will always find your island on your return where you left it, and your islanders with the same eagerness they have always had to receive you as their governor. and my goodwill will remain the same. Doubt not the truth of this, Signor Sancho, for that would be grievously wronging my disposition to serve you. Say no more, Signor, said Sancho. I am a poor squire and not equal to carrying so much courtesy. Let my master mount, bandage my eyes, and commit me to God's care, and tell me if I may commend myself to our Lord, or call upon the angels to protect me when we go towering up there. To this the Trifaldi made answer, Sancho, you may freely commend yourself to God or whom you will, for Malambruno, though an enchanter, is a Christian, and works his enchantments with great circumspection, taking very good care not to fall out with anyone. Well then, said Sancho, God and the most holy Trinity of Gaeta give me help. Since the memorable adventure of the fulling mills, said Don Quixote, I have never seen Sancho in such a fright as now. Were I as superstitious as others, his abject fear would cause me some little trepidation of spirit. But come here, Sancho, for with the leave of these gentles I would say a word or two to thee in private. And drawing Sancho aside among the trees of the garden and seizing both his hands, he said, Thou seest, brother Sancho, the long journey we have before us, and God knows when we shall return, or what leisure or opportunities this business will allow us. I wish thee, therefore, to retire now to thy chamber, as though thou wert going to fetch something required for the road, and in a trice give thyself, if it be only 500 lashes on account of the 3,300 to which thou art bound. It will be all to the good, and to make a beginning with a thing is to have it half finished. By God, said Sancho, but your worship must be out of your senses. This is like the common saying, you see me with child and you want me a virgin. Just as I am about to go sitting on a bare board, your worship would have me score my backside. Indeed, your worship is not reasonable. Let us be off to shave these duennas, and on our return I promise on my word to make such haste to wipe off all that stew as will satisfy your worship. I can't say more. Well, I will comfort myself with that promise, my good Sancho, replied Don Quixote, and I believe thou wilt keep it. For indeed, though stupid, thou art voracious. I am not voracious, said Sancho, only peckish, but even if I was a little, still I'll keep my word. With this, they went back to Mount Clavileno, and as they were about to do so, Don Quixote said, Cover thine eyes, Sancho, and mount, for one who sends for us from lands so far distant cannot mean to deceive us for the sake of the paltry glory to be derived from deceiving persons who trust in him. Though all should turn out the contrary of what I hope, no malice will be able to dim the glory of having undertaken this exploit. Let us be off, Señor, said Sancho, for I have taken the beards and tears of these ladies deeply to heart, and I shan't eat a bit to relish it until I have seen them restored to their former smoothness. Mount, your worship, and blindfold yourself, for if I am to go on the croup, it is plain the rider in the saddle must mount first. That is true, said Don Quixote, and taking a handkerchief out of his pocket, he begged the distressed one to bandage his eyes very carefully, but after having them bandaged, he uncovered them again, saying, If my memory does not deceive me, I have read in Virgil of the Palladium of Troy, a wooden horse in Greeks offered to the goddess Pallas, which was big with armed knights, who were afterwards the destruction of Troy. So it would be as well to see, first of all, what Clavileno has in his stomach. There is no occasion, said the distressed one. I will be bail for him, and I know that Malambruno has nothing tricky or treacherous about him. You may mount without any fear, Señor Don Quixote. On my head be it if any harm befalls you. Don Quixote thought that to say anything further with regard to his safety would be putting his courage in an unfavorable light, and so without more words he mounted Clavileno, and tried the peg, which turned easily, and as he had no stirrups and his legs hung down, he looked like nothing so much as a figure in some Roman triumph painted or embroidered on the Flemish tapestry. Much against the grain, and very slowly, Sancho proceeded to mount, and after settling himself as well as he could on the croup, found it rather hard and not at all soft, and asked the Duke if it would be possible to oblige him with a pad of some kind, or a cushion, even if it were off the couch of his lady the Duchess, or the bed of one of the pages, as the haunches of that horse were more like marble than wood. On this the Trifaldi observed that Clavileno would not bear any kind of harness or trappings, and that his best plan would be to sit sideways like a woman, as in that way he would not feel the hardness so much. Sancho did so, and bidding them farewell, allowed his eyes to be bandaged, but immediately afterwards uncovered them again, and looking tenderly and tearfully on those in the garden, bade them help him in his present strait with plenty of paternosters and Ave Marias, that God might provide someone to say as many for them, whenever they found themselves in a similar emergency. At this Don Quixote exclaimed, "Art thou on the gallows, thief, or at thy last moment, to use pitiful entreaties of that sort? Cowardly, spiritless creature, art thou not in the very place the fair Magalona occupied, and from which she descended not into the grave, but to become Queen of France, unless the histories lie? And I who am here beside thee, may I not put myself on a par with the valiant peers, who press this very spot that I now press? Cover thine eyes, abject animal, and let not thy fear escape thy lips, at least in my presence." "Blindfold me," said Sancho, "as you won't let me commend myself or be commended to God. Is it any wonder if I am afraid there is a region of devils about here that will carry us off to Peralfilo?" They were then blindfolded, and Don Quixote, finding himself settled to his satisfaction, felt for the peg, and the instant he placed his fingers on it, all the duennas and all who stood by lifted up their voices, exclaiming, "God guide thee, valiant knight! God be with thee, intrepid squire! Now ye go cleaving the air more swiftly than an arrow. Now ye begin to amaze and astonish all who are gazing at you from the earth. Take care not to wobble about, valiant Sancho. Mind thou fall not, for thy fall will be worse than the rash youths who tried to steer the chariot of his father the sun." As Sancho heard the voices, clinging tightly to his master and winding his arms round him, he said, "Señor, how do they make out we are going up so high, if the voices reach us here and they seem to be speaking quite close to us?" "Don't mind that, Sancho," said Don Quixote, "for as affairs of this sort, and flights like this are out of the common course of things, you can see and hear as much as you like 1,000 leagues off, but don't squeeze me so tight or thou wilt upset me. And really I know not what thou hast to be uneasy or frightened at, for I can safely swear I never mounted a smoother going steed all the days of my life. One would fancy we never stirred from one place. Banish fear, my friend, for indeed everything is going as it ought, and we have the wind astern." "That's true," said Sancho, "for such a strong wind comes against me on this side, that it seems as if people were blowing on me with 1,000 pair of bellows," which was the case. They were puffing at him with a great pair of bellows, for the whole adventure was so well planned by the Duke, the Duchess, and their major domo, that nothing was omitted to make it perfectly successful. Don Quixote, now feeling the blast, said, "Beyond a doubt, Sancho, we must have already reached the second region of the air, where the hail and snow are generated. The thunder, the lightning, and the thunderbolts are engendered in the third region, and if we go on ascending at this rate, we shall shortly plunge into the region of fire, and I know not how to regulate this peg, so as not to mount up where we shall be burned." And now they began to warm their faces. From a distance, with tow that could be easily set on fire and extinguished again, fixed on the end of the cane. On feeling the heat, Sancho said, "May I die if we are not already in that fireplace or very near it, for a good part of my beard has been singed, and I have a mind, Señor, to uncover and see whereabouts we are." "Do nothing of the kind," said Don Quixote. "Remember the true story of the licentiate Torralva, that the devils carried flying through the air riding on a stick with his eyes shut, who in 12 hours reached Rome and dismounted at Torre de Nona, which is a street of the city, and saw the whole sack and storming and the whole death of Bourbon, and was back in Madrid the next morning, where he gave an account of all he had seen. And he said moreover that as he was going through the air, the devil bade him open his eyes, and he did so, and saw himself so near the body of the moon, so it seemed to him, that he could have laid hold of it with his hand, and that he did not dare to look at the earth, lest he should be seized with giddiness. So that, Sancho, it will not do for us to uncover ourselves, for he who has us in charge will be responsible for us, and perhaps we are gaining an altitude and mounting up to enable us to descend at one swoop on the kingdom of Kandy, as the saker or falcon does on the heron, so as to seize it however high it may soar. And though it seems to us not half an hour since we left the garden, believe me, we must have traveled a great distance." "I don't know how that may be," said Sancho. All I know is that if the Signora Magallanes or Magalona was satisfied with this croup, she could not have been very tender of flesh. The Duke, the Duchess, and all in the garden were listening to the conversation of the two heroes, and were beyond measure amused by it. And now, desirous of putting a finishing touch to this rare and well-contrived adventure, they applied a light to Clavileno's tail with some tow, and the horse, being full of squibs and crackers, immediately blew up with a prodigious noise, and brought Don Quixote and Sancho Panza to the ground half singed. By this time, the bearded band of duennas, the Trifaldi and all, had vanished from the garden, and those that remained lay stretched on the ground as if in a swoon. Don Quixote and Sancho got up rather shaken, and, looking about them, were filled with amazement at finding themselves in the same garden from which they had started, and seeing such a number of people stretched on the ground, and their astonishment was increased when, at one side of the garden, they perceived a tall lance planted in the ground, and hanging from it by two cords a green silk smooth white parchment on which there was the following inscription in large gold letters: "The illustrious knight Don Quixote of La Mancha has, by merely attempting it, finished and concluded the adventure of the Countess Trifaldi, otherwise called the Distressed Duenna. Malambruno is now satisfied on every point, the chins of the duennas are now smooth and clean, and King Don Clavio and Queen Antonomasia in their original form, and when the squally flagellation shall have been completed, the white dove shall find herself delivered from the pestiferous gerfalcons that persecute her, and in the arms of her beloved mate, for such is the decree of the sage Merlin, arch-enchanter of enchanters." As soon as Don Quixote had read the inscription on the parchment, he perceived clearly that it referred to the disenchantment of Dulcinea, and returning hearty thanks to heaven that he had with so little danger achieved so grand an exploit as to restore to their former complexion the countenances of those venerable duennas, he advanced towards the Duke and Duchess, who had not yet come to themselves, and taking the Duke by the hand, he said, "Be of good cheer, worthy sir, be of good cheer. It's nothing at all. The adventure is now over, and without any harm done, as the inscription fixed on his pole shows plainly." The Duke came to himself slowly and like one recovering consciousness after a heavy sleep, and the Duchess and all who had fallen prostrate about the garden did the same, with such demonstrations of wonder and amazement that they would have almost persuaded one that what they pretended so adroitly in jest had happened to them in reality. The Duke read the placard with half-shut eyes, and then ran to embrace Don Quixote with open arms, declaring him to be the best knight that had ever been seen in any age. Sancho kept looking about for the distressed one, to see what her face was like without the beard, and if she was as fair as her elegant person promised. But they told him that, the instant Clavileno descended flaming through the air and came to the ground, the whole band of duennas with the Trifaldi vanished, and that they were already shaved and without a stump left. The Duchess asked Sancho how he had fared on that long journey, to which Sancho replied, "I felt, Signora, that we were flying through the region of fire, as my master told me, and I wanted to uncover my eyes for a bit, but my master, when I asked leave to uncover myself, would not let me. But as I have a little bit of curiosity about me, and a desire to know what is forbidden and kept from me, quietly and without anyone seeing me, I drew aside the handkerchief covering my eyes ever so little, close to my nose, and from underneath looked towards the earth, and it seemed to me that it was altogether no bigger than a grain of mustard seed, and that the men walking on it were a little bigger than hazelnuts. So you may see how high we must have got to then." To this the Duchess said, "Sancho, my friend, mind what you're saying. It seems you could not have seen the earth, but only the men walking on it. For if the earth looked to you like a grain of mustard seed, and each man like a hazelnut, one man alone would have covered the whole earth." "That is true," said Sancho, "but for all that I got a glimpse of a bit of one side of it, and saw it all." "Take care, Sancho," said the Duchess. "With a bit of one side, one does not see the whole of what one looks at." "I don't understand that way of looking at things," said Sancho. "I only know that your ladyship will do well to bear in mind that as we were flying by enchantment, so I might have seen the whole earth and all the men by enchantment whatever way I looked. And if you won't believe this, no more will you believe that, uncovering myself nearly to the eyebrows, I saw myself so close to the sky that there was not a palm and a half between me and it. And by everything that I can swear by, Signora, it is mighty great. And it so happened we came by where the 7 goats are, and by God and upon my soul, as in my youth I was a goat herd in my own country. As soon as I saw them, I felt a longing to be among them for a little, and if I had not given way to it, I think I'd have best. So I come and take. And what do? Without saying anything to anybody, not even to my master, softly and quietly I got down from Clavilleno and amused myself with the goats, which are like violets, like flowers, for nigh 3/4 of an hour. And Clavilleno never stirred or moved from one spot. And while the good Sancho was amusing himself with the goats, said the Duke, how did Señor Don Quixote amuse himself? To which Don Quixote replied, as all these things and such like occurrences are out of the ordinary course of nature, it is no wonder that Sancho says what he does. For my own part, I can only say that I did not uncover my eyes, either above or below, nor did I see sky or earth or sea or shore. It is true I felt that I was passing through the region of the air, and even that I touched that of fire. But that we passed farther I cannot believe. For the region of fire being between the heaven of the moon and the last region of the air, we could not have reached that heaven where the 7 goats Sancho speaks of are without being burned. And as we were not burned, either Sancho is lying or Sancho is dreaming. I am neither lying nor dreaming, said Sancho. Only ask me the tokens of those same goats, and you'll see by that whether I'm telling the truth or not. Tell us them then, Sancho, said the Duchess. 2 of them, said Sancho, are green, 2 blood red, 2 blue, and 1 a mixture of all colors. An odd sort of goat that, said the Duke. In this earthly region of ours we have no such colors. I mean goats of such colors. That's very plain, said Sancho. Of course there must be a difference between the goats of heaven and the goats of the earth. Tell me, Sancho, said the Duke, did you see any he-goat among those goats? No, Señor, said Sancho, but I have heard say that none ever passed the horns of the moon. They did not care to ask him anything more about his journey, for they saw he was in the vein to go rambling all over the heavens, giving an account of everything that went on there, without having ever stirred from the garden. Such, in short, was the end of the adventure of the distressed duenna, which gave the Duke and Duchess laughing matter not only for the time being, but for all their lives, and Sancho something to talk about for ages, if he lived so long. But Don Quixote, coming close to his ear, said to him, Sancho, as you would have us believe what you saw in heaven, I require you to believe me as to what I saw in the cave of Montesinos. I say no more.
好，呢一節就嚟到呢個冒險嘅高潮啦。尋找巨人呢個飛馬點樣造成啊？就係將 Don Quixote 同埋 Sancho 蒙住雙眼先，冇可能俾佢知道發生咩事啦。坐喺隻木馬上面，揾啲風咧就吹佢兩個，等佢兩個有錯覺嘅馬係憑空飛起。身邊嘅女管家們都會同佢講：哇！你哋飛得好快啊！再見啦！哪怕係會構成錯覺破綻，但係Don Quixote照單全收。Sancho 原本都有啲懷疑，直到佢哋吹到一熱風俾佢哋燒着一啲嘢 ，Sancho 就好緊張、好驚啦。燒着咗啲咩咧？佢哋為咗製造呢隻馬由高空墜落，着陸燒着個馬尾，燒到部馬身入面嘅炸藥，咁啊將隻馬咧就炸起。Don Quixote示重兩人就跌落地。到佢醒嘅時候咧，驚魂甫定，眾多嘅女管家竟然消失不見啊！只係有伯爵夫婦一啲隨人面前嚟有一份公文碑文，上面咧就寫住呢個巨人班 Bruno 就好滿意啦。因為咧Don Quixote能夠做出犧牲，佢呢個勇猛就感動到佢就解除咗呢個魔咒。包括 Candy Kingdom 入面國王皇后啦，同埋所有女管家嘅顏面都係特意保存。但係女管家們已經係離開咗現場，有人會交代翻俾 Sancho 聽，佢哋咧已經回復咗個靚樣啊，不過佢哋行先一步消失咗。眾人尤其是伯爵夫人去問 Sancho 啊，頭先你見到啲咩啊？你嘅過程係點 ？Sancho 都好坦誠咁話，我咧就唔中意俾人瞞騙住，所以我都有少少偷窺，就搣開咗眼罩啊，睇到少少嘢咁，睇到個地球啊，好似一粒種子咁細，但係啲人就好似果實咁大，比例咧又全部錯晒。另一方面就問 Don Quixote， 咁佢就話：我冇睇到啲乜，因為我真係戴住個眼罩，我只係感覺到有火有風，之後咧就冇感覺到啲乜啦。 對於 Sancho 之後有描述，佢喺天堂上面見到個羊，見到佢啲親朋戚友啊，開始天馬行空嘅創作之後呢，當吉訶德就好正式咁同 Sancho 講，嗱，我可以相信你講嘅呢啲說話，但係你都要相信我之前喺 Montesino 動念入面我所講嘅嘢，係一個好豐富天馬行空嘅一個篇章。睇下呢一節有啲咩字，大家分享先。protract，P-R-O-T-R-A-C-T 呢一節入面嘅題目有提到呢個 protracted story， 動詞嚟嘅 prolong 嘅意思，拖長延長。circumspection，C-I-R-C-U-M-S-P-E-C-T-I-O-N 名詞嚟嘅 the quality of being wary and unwilling to take risks， prudence 謹慎。giddiness G-I-D-D-I-N-E-S-S 名詞嚟嘅 a sensation of whirling and a tendency to fall or stagger dizziness， 或者 a state of excitable frivolity。 中文我哋會解做好眩暈，有啲暈。另外一個解釋咧就係好輕浮。故事入面嘅 giddiness 解做好暈啊，大家都好暈咁樣嘅狀況。好，我哋今日讀到呢度，下一節再讀你聽，拜拜。大家好，讀你聽嘅時間，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 我哋讀到 Part 2 嘅第42節，呢節個名叫做 Of the counsels which Don Quixote gave Sancho Panza before he set out to govern the island, together with other well-considered matters。咁上一回咧就講到作弄 Don Quixote 嘅小遊戲都叫做完結呢隻木馬憑空飛升，然之後就落地。當然呢啲都係玩象虛假嘅，隻馬由頭到尾都冇飛上去，只係大家喺度撥風吹風，用火燒隻馬，炸藥炸起咗，衝落地，拍到侍從兩人差唔多暈咗過去，而其他人都扮暈。醒咗之後就話件事已經解決咗，巨人留低咗碑文，大家咧可以放心啦。Don Quixote 見到有驚無險，當然係照單全收。Sancho 都好高興。我哋睇下呢一節佢哋嘅情況咧。
The Duke and Duchess were so well pleased with the successful and droll result of the adventure of the distressed one that they resolved to carry on the joke, seeing what a fit subject they had to deal with for making it all pass for reality. So having laid their plans and given instructions to their servants and vassals how to behave to Sancho in his government of the Promised Island, the next day, that following Clavillano's flight, the Duke told Sancho to prepare and get ready to go and be governor, for his islanders were already looking out for him as for the showers of May. Sancho made him an obeisance and said, Ever since I came down from heaven, and from the top of it beheld the earth, and saw how little it is, the great desire I had to be a governor has been partly cooled in me. For what is there grand in being ruler on a grain of mustard seed? Or what dignity or authority in governing half a dozen men, about as big as hazelnuts? For, so far as I could see, there were no more on the whole earth. If your lordship would be so good as to give me ever so small a bit of heaven, were it no more than half a league, I'd rather have it than the best island in the world. Recollect, Sancho, said the Duke, I cannot give a bit of heaven, no, not so much as the breadth of my nail, to anyone. Rewards and favours of that sort are reserved for God alone. What I can give, I give you. And that is a real, genuine island, compact, well-proportioned, and uncommonly fertile and fruitful, where, if you know how to use your opportunities, you may, with the help of the world's riches, gain those of heaven. Well then, said Sancho, let the island come, and I'll try and be such a governor, that in spite of scoundrels, I'll go to heaven. And it's not from any craving to quit my own humble condition or better myself, but from a desire I have to try what it tastes like to be a governor. If you once make trial of it, Sancho, said the Duke, you'll eat your fingers off after the government. So sweet a thing is it to command and be obeyed. Depend upon it, when your master comes to be emperor, it will be no easy matter to wrest dignity from him, and he will be sore and sorry at heart to have been so long without becoming one. Signor, said Sancho, It is my belief it's a good thing to be in command, if it's only over a drove of cattle. May I be buried with you, Sancho, said the Duke, but you know everything. I hope you will make as good a governor as your sagacity promises. And that is all I have to say. And now remember, tomorrow is the day you must set out for the government of the island. And this evening they will provide you with the proper attire for you to wear and all things requisite for your departure. Let them dress me as they like, said Sancho. However I'm dressed, I'll be Sancho Panza. That's true, said the Duke, but one's dress must be suited to the office or rank one holds, for it would not do for a jurist to dress like a soldier, or a soldier like a priest. You, Sancho, shall go partly as a lawyer, partly as a captain, for, in the island I'm giving you, arms are needed as much as letters, and letters as much as arms. Of letters I know but little, said Sancho, for I don't even know the ABC. But it is enough for me to have the Christus in my memory to be a good governor. As for arms, I'll handle those they give me till I drop, and then God be my help. With so good a memory, said the Duke, Sancho cannot go wrong in anything. Here Don Quixote joined them, and learning what passed and how soon Sancho was to go to his government, he, with the Duke's permission, took him by the hand and retired to his room with him for the purpose of giving him advice as to how he was to demean himself in his office. As soon as they had entered the chamber, he closed the door after him, and almost by force made Sancho sit down beside him, and in a quiet tone thus addressed him. I give infinite thanks to heaven, friend Sancho, that, before I have met with any good luck, fortune has come forward to meet thee. I, who counted upon my good fortune to discharge the recompense of thy services, find myself still waiting for advancement, while thou, before the time, and contrary to all reasonable expectation, seest thyself blessed in the fulfillment of thy desires. Some who bribe, beg, solicit, rise early, entreat, persist, without attaining the object of their suit, while another comes, and without knowing why or wherefore, finds himself infested with the place or office so many have sued for. And here it is that the common saying, there is good luck as well as bad luck in suits, applies. Thou who, to my thinking, art beyond all doubt a dullard, without early rising or night watching or taking any trouble, with the mere breath of knight-errantry that has breathed upon thee, seest thyself without more ado governor of an island, as though it were a mere matter of course. This I say, Sancho, that thou attribute not the favour thou hast received to thine own merits, but give thanks to heaven and dispose matters beneficently. And secondly, thanks to the great power the profession of knight-errantry contains in itself. With a heart then inclined to believe what I have said to thee, attend, my son, to thy cattle here, who would counsel thee and be thy pole-star and guide to direct and pilot thee to a safe haven out of this stormy sea wherein thou art about to engulf thyself. For offices and great trusts are nothing else but a mighty gulf of troubles. First of all, my son, thou must fear God, for in the fear of him is wisdom, and being wise thou canst no err in aught. Secondly, thou must keep in view what thou art, striving to know thyself, the most difficult thing to know that the mind can imagine. If thou knowest thyself, it will follow you will not puff thyself up like the frog that strove to make himself as large as the ox. If thou dost, the recollection of having kept pigs in thine own country will serve as the ugly feet for the wheel of thy folly. That's the truth, said Sancho. But that was when I was a boy. Afterwards, when I was something more of a man, it was geese I kept, not pigs. But to my thinking, that has nothing to do with it, for all who are governors don't come of a kingly stock. True, said Don Quixote, and for that reason those who are not of noble origin should take care that the dignity of the office they hold be accompanied by a gentle suavity, which wisely managed will save them from the sneers of malice that no station escapes. Glory in thy humble birth, Sancho, and be not ashamed of saying thou art peasant born. For when it is seen thou art not ashamed, no one will set himself to put thee to the blush, and pride thyself rather upon being one of lowly virtue than a lofty sinner. Countless are they who, born of mean parentage, have risen to the highest dignities, pontifical and imperial, and of the truth of this I could give thee instances enough to weary thee. Remember, Sancho, if thou make virtue thy aim, and take a pride in doing virtuous actions, thou wilt have no cause to envy those who have princely and lordly ones, for blood is an inheritance, but virtue an acquisition, and virtue has in itself alone a worth that blood does not possess. This being so, if perchance any one of thy kinsfolk should come to see thee when thou art in thine island, thou art not to repel or slight him, but on the contrary to welcome him, entertain him, and make much of him. For in so doing thou wilt be approved of heaven, and wilt comply with the laws of well-ordered nature. If thou carriest thy wife with thee, teach and instruct her, and strive to smooth down her natural roughness, for all that may be gained by a wise governor may be lost and wasted by a boorish stupid wife. In perchance thou art left a widower, a thing which may happen, and in virtue of thy office seekest a consort of higher degree. Choose not one to serve thee for a hook, or for a fishing rod, or for the hood of thy wont habit. For verily I tell thee, for all the judge's wife receives, the husband will be held accountable at the general calling to account, where he will have repaid in death fourfold, items that in life he regarded as naught. Never go by arbitrary law, which is so much favored by ignorant men who plume themselves on cleverness. Let the tears of the poor man find with thee more compassion, but not more justice, than the pleadings of the rich. Strive to lay bare the truth, as well amid the promises and presents of the rich man, as amid the sobs and entreaties of the poor. When equity may and should be brought into play, press not the utmost rigor of the law against the guilty, for the reputation of the stern judge stands not higher than that of the compassionate. If perchance thou permittest the staff of justice to swerve, let it be not by the weight of a gift, but by that of mercy. If it should happen to thee to give judgment in the cause of one who is thine enemy, turn thy thoughts away from thy injury and fix them on the justice of the case. Let not thine own passion blind thee in another man's cause, for the errors thou wilt thus commit will be most frequently irremediable, or if not, only to be remedied at the expense of thy good name and even of thy fortune. If any handsome woman come to seek justice of thee, turn away thine eyes from her tears and thine ears from her lamentations, and consider deliberately the merits of her demand, if thou wouldst not have thy reason swept away by her weeping, and thy rectitude by her sighs. Abuse not by word him whom thou hast to punish indeed, for the pain of punishment is enough for the unfortunate without the addition of thine objurgations. Bear in mind that the culprit who comes under thy jurisdiction is but a miserable man subject to all the propensities of our depraved nature, and so far as may be in thy power show thyself lenient and forbearing, for though the attributes of God are all equal, to our eyes that of mercy is brighter and loftier than that of justice. If thou followest these precepts and rules, Sancho, thy days will be long, thy fame eternal, thy reward abundant, thy felicity unutterable. Thou wilt marry thy children as thou wouldst. They and thy grandchildren will bear titles. Thou wilt live in peace and concord with all men. And when life draws to a close, death will come to thee in calm and ripe old age, and the light and loving hands of thy great-grandchildren will close thine eyes. What I have thus far addressed to thee are instructions for the adornment of thy mind. Listen now to those which tend to that of the body.
好，呢一節主要就係講 Don Quixote 對 Sancho 嘅忠告。忠告啲乜嘢呢？原因就係伯爵夫婦咧實在太高興，對於呢個玩笑，佢就諗住繼續開落去，同 Sancho 講：而家咧我就交一個島俾你去管治啦，你就即刻走馬上任啦。Sancho 咧就話：哦，着呢靚衫符合佢嘅官職，係會派啲人去輔助佢。Sancho 話：無論你點樣包裝我都係 Sancho Panza 嘅。Don Quixote之後就同 Sancho 講咗一堆語重心長嘅說話啦，就係話俾佢聽，保持住咩一個心態去管治，亦都話俾佢聽，你呢一個機遇係上天俾你嘅，並唔係單純因為你作為一個騎士嘅侍從，呢個係一個天賜俾你嘅機遇，必須要好好珍惜。Don Quixote 咧就講點樣去管治咧，當然係要公正啦，有道德、寬容、包容，基本上要愛民如己啦。如果你做呢一點咧，咁你就可以長命百歲，你嘅子孫都會繼續流芳百世。 所以 Don Quixote 係好有前瞻性嘅，似乎亦都係作者要借住 Don Quixote 同執政人嘅一啲講法，對佢人民要有愛啊！好，我哋呢節嚟到呢度，下一節再同大家讀你聽，拜拜。大家好，讀你聽嘅時間，今日繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 我哋讀到 Part 2嘅第43節，呢一節嘅名叫做 Of the second set of counsels Don Quixote gave Sancho Panza。似乎呢一節要繼續 Don Quixote 嘅長篇大論，就係 Don Quixote 要教 Panza 點樣去管治啊。伯爵夫婦佢哋繼續要開呢個玩笑，就真係俾呢個小島 Sancho Panza 去管治，睇下佢搞成點。話唔係好好笑咧，將呢樣嘢當做玩笑。咁當然咧，辛祖咧係唔知嘅，佢只係抱住一個好認真、誠惶誠恐嘅心情，換咗一身嘅打扮啊，準備好佢心情走馬上任。不過走馬上任之前呢，Don Quixote 嘅上一回已經訓話 Sancho 啦，但係好似未講完喎。咁我哋睇下 Don Quixote 仲有啲咩講啊？除咗愛民如己，仲有啲咩可以做咧
？Who, hearing the foregoing discourse of Don Quixote, would not have set him down for a person of great good sense and greater rectitude of purpose, but, as has been frequently observed in the course of this great history, he only talked nonsense when he touched on chivalry, and in discussing all other subjects showed that he had a clear and unbiased understanding, so that at every turn his acts gave the lie to his intellect, and his intellect to his acts. And in the case of these second counsels that he gave Sancho, he showed himself to have a lively turn of humour, and displayed conspicuously his wisdom, and also his folly. Sancho listened to him with the deepest attention, and endeavoured to fix his counsels in his memory, like one who meant to follow them, and by their means bring the full promise of his government to a happy issue. Don Quixote then went on to say, With regard to the mode in which thou shouldst govern thy person and thy house, Sancho, the first charge I have to give thee is to be clean, and to cut thy nails, not letting them grow as some do, whose ignorance makes them fancy that long nails are an ornament to their hands, as if those excrescences they neglect to cut were nails, and not the talons of a lizard-catching kestrel, a filthy and unnatural abuse. Go not ungirt and loose, Sancho, for disordered attire is a sign of an unstable mind, unless indeed the slovenliness and slackness is to be set down to craft, as was the common opinion in the case of Julius Caesar. Ascertain cautiously what thy office may be worth, and if it will allow thee to give liveries to thy servants, give them respectable and serviceable, rather than showy and gay ones, and divide them between thy servants and the poor. That is to say, if thou canst clothe 6 pages, clothe 3 and 3 poor men, and thus thou wilt have pages for heaven and pages for earth. The vainglorious never think of this new mode of giving liveries. Eat not garlic nor onions, lest they find out thy boorish origin by the smell. Walk slowly and speak deliberately, but not in such a way as to make it seem thou art listening to thyself, for all affectation is bad. Dine sparingly and sup more sparingly still, for the health of the whole body is forged in the workshop of the stomach. Be temperate in drinking, bearing in mind that wine in excess keeps neither secrets nor promises. Take care, Sancho, not to chew on both sides, and not to erupt in anybody's presence. Erupt, said Sancho. I don't know what that means. To erupt, Sancho, said Don Quixote, means to belch, and that is one of the filthiest words in the Spanish language, though a very expressive one, and therefore nice folk have had recourse to the Latin, and instead of belch say erupt, and instead of belches say eructations. And if some do not understand these terms, it matters little, for custom will bring them into use in the course of time, so that they will be readily understood. This is the way a language is enriched. Custom and the public are all powerful there. In truth, Signor, said Sancho, one of the counsels and cautions I mean to bear in mind shall be this, not to belch, for I am constantly doing it. Eruct, Sancho, not belch, said Don Quixote. Eruct, I shall say henceforth, and I swear not to forget it, said Sancho. Likewise, Sancho, said Don Quixote, thou must not mingle such a quantity of proverbs in thy discourse as thou dost. For though proverbs are short maxims, thou dost drag them in so often by the head and shoulders that they savour more of nonsense than of maxims. God alone can cure that, said Sancho, for I have more proverbs in me than a book, and when I speak they come so thick together into my mouth that they fall to fighting among themselves to get out. That's why my tongue lets fly the first that come, though they may not be packed to the purpose. But I'll take care henceforth to use such as befit the dignity of my office. For in a house where there's plenty, supper is soon cooked. And he who binds does not wrangle, and the bell ringers in a safe berth, and giving and keeping require brains. That's it, Sancho, said Don Quixote. Pack, tack, string proverbs together, nobody is hindering thee. My mother beats me, and I go on with my tricks. I am bidding thee avoid proverbs, and here in a second thou hast shot out a whole litany of them, which have as much to do with what we are talking about as over the hills of Ubeda. Mind, Sancho, I do not say that a proverb aptly brought in is objectionable, but to pile up and string together proverbs at random makes conversation dull and vulgar. When thou ridest on horseback, do not go lolling with thy body on the back of the saddle, nor carry thy legs stiff or sticking out from the horse's belly, nor yet sit so loosely that one would suppose thou wert on dapple, for the seat on a horse makes gentlemen of some and grooms of others. Be moderate in thy sleep, for he who does not rise early does not get the benefit of the day. And remember, Sancho, diligence is the mother of good fortune, and indolence its opposite, never yet attained the object of an honest ambition. The last counsel I will give thee now, though it does not tend to bodily improvement, I would have thee carry carefully in thy memory, for I believe it will be no less useful to thee than those I have given thee already. And it is this: never engage in disputes about families, at least in the way of comparing them one with another. For necessarily one of those compared will be better than the other, and thou wilt be hated by the one thou hast disparaged, and get nothing in any shape from the one thou hast exalted. Thy attire shall be hose of full length, a long jerkin, and a cloak a trifle longer, loose breeches by no means, for they are becoming neither for gentlemen nor for governors. For the present, Sancho, this is all that has occurred to me to advise thee. As time goes by and occasions arise, my instructions shall follow, if thou take care to let me know how thou art circumstanced. Señor, said Sancho, I see well enough that all these things your worship has said to me are good, holy, and profitable. But what use will they be to me if I don't remember one of them? To be sure that about not letting my nails grow, and marrying again if I have the chance, will not slip out of my head. But all that other harsh, muddle, and jumble, I don't and can't recollect any more of it than of last year's clouds, so it must be given me in writing. For though I can't either read or write, I'll give it to my confessor, to drive it into me and remind me of it whenever it is necessary. Ah, sinner that I am, said Don Quixote, how bad it looks in governors not to know how to read or write. For let me tell thee, Sancho, when a man knows not how to read or is left-handed, it argues one of two things, either that he was the son of exceedingly mean and lowly parents, or that he himself was so incorrigible and ill-conditioned that neither good company nor good teaching could make any impression on him. It is great the fact that thou labourest under, and therefore I would have thee learn at any rate to sign thy name. I can sign my name well enough, said Sancho, for when I was steward of the brotherhood in my village I learned to make certain letters, like the marks on bales of goods, which they told me made out my name. Besides, I can pretend my right hand is disabled and make someone else sign for me, for there is remedy for everything except death. And as I shall be in command and hold the staff, I can do as I like. Moreover, he who has the alcalde for his father, and I'll be governor, and that's higher than alcalde. Only come and see. Let them make light of me and abuse me. They'll come for wool and go back shorn. Whom God loves, his house is known to him. The silly sayings of the rich pass for sores in the world, and as I'll be rich, being a governor, and at the same time generous, as I mean to be, no fault will be seen in me. Only make yourself honey, and the flies will suck you, as much as thou hast so much art thou worth, as my grandmother used to say, and thou canst have no revenge of a man of substance. Oh, God's curse upon thee, Sancho, here exclaimed Don Quixote. 60,000 devils fly away with thee and thy proverbs. For the last hour thou hast been stringing them together and inflicting the pangs of torture on me with every one of them. Those proverbs will bring thee to the gallows one day, I promise thee. Thy subjects will take the government from thee, or there will be revolts among them. Tell me, where dost thou pick them up, thou booby? How dost thou apply them, thou blockhead? For with me, to utter one and make it apply properly, I have to sweat and labor as if I were digging. By God, master mine, said Sancho, your worship is making a fuss about very little. Why the devil should you be vexed if I make use of what is my own, and I have got nothing else, nor any other stock in trade except proverbs and more proverbs? And here are 3 just this instant come into my head, packed to the purpose and like pears in the basket, but I won't repeat them, for sage silence is called Sancho. That, Sancho, thou art not, said Don Quixote, for not only art thou not sage silence, but thou art pestilent pride and perversity. Still, I would like to know what 3 proverbs have just now come into thy memory, for I have been turning over mine own, and it is a good one, and none occurs to me. What can be better, said Sancho, than never put thy thumbs between 2 back teeth, and to get out of my house, and what do you want with my wife? There is no answer, and whether the pitcher hits the stone, or the stone the pitcher, it's a bad business for the pitcher, all which fit to a hair. For no one should quarrel with his governor, or him in authority over him, because he will come off the worst, as he does who puts his finger between 2 back, and if they are not back teeth, it makes no difference, so long as they are teeth. And to whatever the governor may say, there's no answer, any more than to get out of my house, and what do you want with my wife? And then, as for that about the stone and the pitcher, a blind man can see that, so that he who sees the mote in another's eye had need to see the beam on his own, that it be not said of himself, the dead woman was frightened at the one with her throat cut. And your worship knows well that the fool knows more in his own house than the wise man in another's. Nay, Sancho, said Don Quixote, the fool knows nothing, either in his own house or in anybody else's, for no wise structure of any sort can stand on the foundation of folly. But let us say no more about it, Sancho. For if thou governest badly, thine will be the fault and mine the shame. But I comfort myself with having done my duty in advising thee as earnestly and as wisely as I could, and thus I am released from my obligations and my promise. God guide thee, Sancho, and govern thee in thy government, and deliver me from the misgiving I have that thou wilt turn the whole island upside down, a thing I might easily prevent by explaining to the Duke what thou art, and telling him that all that fat little person of thine is nothing else but a sack full of proverbs and sauciness. Señor, said Sancho, if your worship thinks I am not fit for this government, I give it up on the spot. For the mere black of the nail of my sword is dearer to me than my whole body, and I can live just as well, simple Sancho, on bread and onions as governor, on partridges and capons. And what's more, while we're asleep, we're all equal, great and small, rich and poor. But if your worship looks into it, you will see it was your worship alone that put me on this business of governing. For I know no more about the government of islands than a buzzard. And if there's any reason to think that because of my being a governor, the devil will get hold of me, I'd rather go Sancho to heaven than governor to hell. By God, Sancho, said Don Quixote, for those last words thou hast uttered alone, I consider thou deservest to be governor of 1,000 islands. Thou hast good natural instincts, without which no knowledge is worth anything. Commend thyself to God, and try not to swerve in the pursuit of thy main object. I mean, always make it thy aim and fixed purpose to do right in all matters that come before thee, for heaven always helps good intentions. And now let us go to dinner, for I think my lord and lady are waiting for us.
好，呢一節就嚟到呢一度。Don Quixote喺上一節就講咗 Sancho 應該抱住咩嘅態度去管治。咁呢一節就講 Sancho 佢自身身體力行要做啲咩？起碼喺佢自身上面要保持整潔，佢嘅外貌見得人 well groomed， 要裝扮好，就唔好似平時咁污糟邋遢、衣衫不整，作息要定時，同埋唔可以有胃氣啊！唔好噴啲胃氣出嚟，好難睇，咁千祈唔好做呢啲嘢。最重要嘅就係談吐啦。 Don Quixote 長期都唔中意 Sancho 講好多言語嘅，但係 Sancho 就只係講言語嘅啫，一大堆啲老生常談。Sancho 當然就反對啦，話我淨係識呢樣嘢啫，你都唔俾我講咁樣。Sancho 咧仲就話你同我講咁多嘢，我都好感激，但係我根本就記唔到，你一定要寫低佢。但係咧我又唔識字，可能我要揾個神職人員咧幫我翻譯啦咁。Don Quixote 就話，你作為一個島主，作為一個管治者，你點可能可以唔識字又唔識睇啊？你一定要學啊！到最尾咧 ，Sancho 就話，如果主人你認為我係唔適合做管治者嘅話，我不如唔做啦。我寧願做一個普通人、平凡人，好好地過日子，都好過要做一個唔稱職嘅管治者，咁樣要落地獄噶。Don Quixote當佢聽到 Sancho 咁樣講，將呢個責任擺得咁重咧，佢就覺得，聽我哋咁講，我就放心啦。因為無論點都好，只要你嘅本性、你嘅本心管治得出色嘅話咧，你一定會做到嘅。上天咧一定會眷顧報身之德嘅。好，我哋睇下呢個字有啲咩字同大家分享。Conspicuously, conspicuously, conspicuously, 副詞嚟嘅 adverb。In a clearly visible way， 好顯眼嘅，好顯著嘅。Excrescence, E-X-C-R-E-S-C-E-N-C-E， 名詞嚟嘅。A distinct outgrowth on body, plant, resulting from disease or abnormality， 腫瘤、毒瘤，即係啲唔好嘅嘢嚟嘅。Slovenliness，slovenliness，S-L-O-V-E-N-L-I-N-E-S-S， 名詞 being careless, untidy or dirty， 邋遢啊，唔整齊啊。呢一個字就係Don Quixote形容喺 Sancho 嗰度啦，即係叫佢唔好咁邋遢啦。好，我哋呢一節嚟到呢度，下一節再讀你聽，拜拜。